My mother cut your wedding dress. Nathan said it like the words were burning his mouth. For a second, nobody moved. Then, someone in the back row gasped. Another person whispered, "What?" And suddenly, 120 people were staring at us. I was standing in the middle of my own wedding ceremony wearing a black dress. Not white. Black. Honestly. The silence felt heavier than any screaming would have. You ever notice how quiet a crowd gets when they realize something ugly just happened? Yeah, it was that kind of quiet. The ocean wind drifted over the terrace. It smelled like salt and cold stone. Nathan looked like someone had punched him in the stomach. "Audrey," he said quietly, leaning closer. "Tell me that isn't true." I looked at him for a long second. Then I took the microphone from the officiant's hand. My heart should have been racing. I should have been crying. Brides usually cry at weddings. Right. But I wasn't crying. I was calm. Scary calm. "I was supposed to walk down this aisle wearing white today," I said. People shifted in their chairs. Someone dropped a glass behind the third row. I didn't even look. "My name is Audrey Carter, and I am 30 years old." I let that sit for a moment. Most of the people watching me had no idea what was going on yet. Nathan still looked confused. So did my family. Honestly, I can't blame them. If you had walked into this ceremony 5 minutes ago, you probably would have thought everything was normal too. Perfect venue, perfect weather, perfect wedding. Except 40 minutes earlier, when I opened the garment bag in the bridal suite, my wedding dress was lying inside it in pieces. Before that moment at the altar, most people knew me as the calm one, the organized one. Which is funny, considering the situation. I design weddings for a living. Real ones. Big ones. The kind where people spend more money on flowers than I used to make in a year. Coastal venues, vineyard ceremonies, guest lists full of lawyers and tech founders who want their wedding to look effortless while quietly costing 6 figures. My job is making sure nothing goes wrong. So, yeah, the irony wasn't lost on me. Nathan used to joke about it. If anything ever goes wrong at our wedding, he told me once, "You'll fix it before anyone notices." I laughed. That's literally my job. We were sitting in my apartment kitchen that night. The smell of burnt coffee was filling the room because I'd forgotten the pot on the stove again. Nathan smiled the way he always did when he thought I was being dramatic. "You worry too much," he said. "Someone has to—" Nathan Sinclair is 33 years old, aerospace engineer, quiet, patient, the kind of man who listens before he speaks, which was one of the reasons I fell in love with him. The other reason was that he felt safe, or at least I thought he did. There was just one problem. Nathan's mother, Eleanor Sinclair. The first time we met, she shook my hand, looked me up and down, and said very calmly, "So you're the woman planning to marry my son." Eleanor Sinclair didn't raise her voice. That was the first thing I noticed about Nathan's mother. She didn't need volume to control a room. When she spoke, people listened the way they do when someone has already decided how things will end. The first dinner at her house felt carefully arranged, plates aligned perfectly, candles straight. The faint smell of rosemary from the roast chicken drifted through the dining room. Eleanor poured wine and looked at me across the table. "Nathan tells me you plan weddings. I design them," I said. She gave a slow nod. "That sounds stressful." Nathan smiled, trying to lighten the moment. "Audrey's really good at it. I'm sure she is," Eleanor replied calmly. Then she turned her attention back to me. "But marriage isn't an event," she said. "It's a responsibility." The word responsibility landed heavier than the rest of the sentence. Nathan shifted in his chair. "Mom, I'm just being honest." That became her style. Not arguments, just small corrections. Little reminders about how things should be done. 2 months later, during a planning dinner, she studied the seating chart I'd brought. Why is Audrey's friend Olivia sitting at the family table because she helped organize the wedding? I said. Eleanor slid the paper back to me. Family should sit with family. Nathan rubbed the back of his neck. Mom, it's fine. It's not about fine, she replied. It's about priorities. Later in the car, I told Nathan quietly, Your mother doesn't like me. He sighed and stared through the windshield. She just needs time. Time for what Nathan didn't answer. A few weeks later, Eleanor smiled at me over tea and said softly, Marriage changes a man. She paused just long enough for the words to settle, and not always for the better. My sister Camille has always known exactly when to smile. That's the unsettling thing about her. At first you think she's being kind, helpful, supportive. Then, if you watch a little longer, you realize she's standing just slightly to the side of you instead of beside you. At the rehearsal dinner, she slipped into the chair next to Nathan before I even had a chance to sit down. Long day, she asked, resting her hand lightly on his arm. Nathan gave a tired laugh. Wedding planning is more complicated than rocket systems. Camille laughed like he'd said something charming. I told Audrey she was lucky to find someone this patient. I sat across from them and watched the two of them talk for a moment, the servers moving quietly around the table with trays of wine. After a while, Camille leaned closer to Nathan again. Your mom's just worried about you, she said softly. She doesn't mean anything by it. Nathan nodded. I know. I set my fork down. She rearranged the seating chart without telling me. Camille turned toward me with that same polite smile. She's family. So am I. I said. Camille lifted her glass. Ice tapped lightly against the side. Not yet. Nathan frowned. Camille. She raised her hands slightly. Relax. I'm just saying marriage changes dynamics. A few minutes later, Nathan stepped outside to answer a call. Camille watched him leave. Then she said quietly, almost thoughtfully, Nathan deserves someone who understands his family. I looked at her. She smiled again, like the comment meant nothing at all. The night before the wedding was supposed to be quiet. Most of the guests had already checked into the resort. The planners finished the setup. The terrace lights were glowing outside the windows. Everything looked ready. Nathan stood near the door of the suite, adjusting his jacket. Mom wants to have dinner, he said. Tonight, I asked. Yeah, just family. I folded the seating chart on the table. I thought the rehearsal dinner already happened. Nathan shrugged. She says it's tradition. Since when he smiled a little. Audrey. It's just dinner. I watched him grab his phone. Camille's name flashed on the screen for a second before he slid it into his pocket. You're going with your mom and my sister, I said. Nathan hesitated. They're already downstairs. That answer sat wrong in my chest. You're leaving me here the night before our wedding, I said quietly. Nathan walked over and kissed my forehead. I'll be back in an hour. The door closed behind him. The room felt too big after that. I sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through the final timeline for tomorrow. Ceremony at 5, reception at 6, first dance at 7. The air conditioner hummed softly in the background. About 30 minutes later, Nathan texted, Dinner's going longer than I thought. I stared at the message for a while. Then I locked my phone and set it face down on the nightstand. 40 minutes before the ceremony, the bridal suite was already loud with movement. Makeup brushes tapping the table. Someone adjusting the timeline. The faint smell of hairspray hanging in the air. Olivia stood behind me fixing the last pins in my hair. Guests are already arriving, she said. I know. I answered, reaching for the garment bag hanging near the window. I unzipped it. The room went silent. For a moment, my mind simply refused to understand what I was seeing. The dress was ruined. The silk bodice had been sliced straight down the center. Lace sleeves hung in thin pieces like torn paper. Whoever did it hadn't rushed. The cuts were careful, deliberate. Olivia stepped closer. Audrey, one of the bridesmaids whispered. Who would do something like this? Another said immediately, "We should call security." I didn't answer. I walked into the hallway, needing air. The corridor outside the suite was empty except for two voices drifting from around the corner. I knew them instantly. Camille laughed first. "She's going to lose her mind when she sees it." Eleanor's voice followed, calm as ever. "Good." A small metallic sound hit the floor. "Scissors." Then Eleanor said quietly, "She needs to understand who actually runs this family." Camille lowered her voice. "Nathan's going to feel terrible for her. He'll recover." Eleanor replied, "Men usually do." I stood there frozen, barely 10 feet away. My stomach turned for a second. Then the feeling passed. When I walked back into the suite, everyone was still staring at the destroyed dress. Olivia rushed toward me. "What happened?" I closed the door behind me. "Don't call security," I said. "Audrey, I heard them," I said quietly. The room went still. I walked to my suitcase and unzipped it. Inside was the dress I'd worn to the rehearsal dinner. Black silk. I lifted it out and held it up. "We're still going to the ceremony." The room stayed quiet after I said it. "We're still going to the ceremony." One of the bridesmaids shook her head slowly. "Audrey, you can't be serious." For a second, I just stood there holding the black dress in my hands. My fingers were trembling more than I wanted anyone to notice. Olivia saw it. "Audrey," she said softly. I took a slow breath and pulled the dress over my shoulders. The silk slid against my skin, cool and heavy. Olivia watched me through the mirror. "You're actually doing this." "Yes." "Audrey, Eleanor destroyed your wedding dress, and Camille helped her." The words sounded calmer than I felt. Olivia folded her arms. "Then we call security." I shook my head. "No." "Why not?" "Because calling security would turn everything into a private scandal in some hotel office. Reports, managers, apologies whispered in hallways. They would control the story, not me." "Because this is better," I said. The girls exchanged uneasy looks. Olivia stepped closer. "Better how I picked up the makeup brush and steadied my hand against the table before fixing the corner of my eyeliner. Right now they think I'm hiding somewhere crying." Olivia studied my face. "Aren't you?" I almost laughed. "No." I zipped the back of the dress and turned toward them. Olivia blinked in surprise. The black dress wasn't dramatic, just clean silk and sharp lines. "You look like you're going to a funeral," she said quietly. "In a way." I answered, "I am." A knock came at the door. The wedding planner stepped inside, slightly out of breath. "Guests are seated," she said. "We're ready whenever you are." Her eyes moved over the dress. "Oh." I picked up my phone from the table and slipped it into my hand. Let's not keep everyone waiting. When I stepped onto the terrace, the violinist stopped playing. No one asked her to. She just did. More than 100 guests turned toward the aisle at the same moment. A soft ripple of whispers moved through the chairs. "Why is she wearing black?" Nathan stood at the end of the aisle, completely still. As I walked toward him, the sound of my heels echoed sharply against the stone floor. When I reached him, he leaned closer. "Audrey," he said quietly. "What's going on?" Before I could answer, the officiant cleared his throat. "We are gathered here today." "Wait," I said, reaching for the microphone. The small burst of feedback made several guests flinch. "I was supposed to walk down this aisle wearing white today." Confused murmurs spread through the crowd. Nathan frowned. "Audrey, 40 minutes ago." I continued. I opened the garment bag in the bridal suite. I lifted my phone, and I found my wedding dress cut into pieces. The terrace grew louder with shocked whispers. I tapped the screen and turned the phone so the guests could hear the recording. Camille's voice came first. "She's going to panic when she sees it." Then Eleanor answered calmly. "Good. She needs to understand who actually runs this family." Gasps moved through the rows of chairs. Nathan turned slowly toward the back of the terrace. Mom! Eleanor straightened where she stood. That recording proves nothing, she said sharply. It proves enough, I replied. Nathan's voice dropped, heavy with disbelief. You destroyed her dress. I protected you, Eleanor answered coldly. From what Nathan demanded, from marrying the wrong woman. A stunned silence settled over the terrace. Nathan shook his head slowly. You didn't just ruin a dress, he said. You ruined my wedding. I placed the microphone back on the stand. A marriage should start with trust, I said quietly. I took a breath. So there won't be a wedding today. The silence deepened. Then I added gently, but dinner is still served. I didn't stay to watch the terrace fall apart. By the time the guests started talking again, I was already walking down the narrow path behind the ceremony area. Gravel shifted under my heels as I moved toward the parking lot. Audrey Nathan's voice carried behind me. I kept walking. He caught up a moment later and grabbed my arm gently. Wait, please. I stopped but didn't turn right away. When I finally looked at him, he seemed different somehow, paler, unsteady. I didn't know, he said. I know. Nathan blinked. You do. I know you didn't know about the dress. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. That doesn't make this better. No, I said quietly. It doesn't. For a moment he looked back toward the terrace where raised voices drifted through the night air. I just had the worst argument of my life with my mother, he muttered. She thinks she saved me. I exhaled slowly. Nathan, your mother didn't become this person today. He didn't answer. The side door behind us opened. Camille walked out, heels clicking across the pavement. Nathan, she said softly, you shouldn't be out here alone. He turned toward her, anger finally sharpening his voice. You helped destroy Audrey's dress. Camille crossed her arms. I was trying to protect you. Protect me. You deserve someone who understands your family. Nathan stepped back like the words had physically struck him. Stay away from me, he said quietly. Camille's smile disappeared. Without another word, she turned and walked back toward the terrace. The ocean wind moved across the empty parking lot. Nathan stared at the ground. Neither of us spoke again. 2 years later, I walked back into the same resort. Not as a bride, as the planner. Tables go another 2 feet left. I told the staff. The aisle needs space. A new couple was getting married that evening. I was running the whole event now. My company had grown faster than I expected. Nathan appeared near the terrace railing. He looked older. I heard you're the best designer on the coast now, he said. I stay busy. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I should have stood up sooner. You did, I answered, just too late. He nodded like he already knew. Before leaving, he said, you deserved better. Maybe I did. Here's the thing I learned, though. Sometimes the worst day of your life is just the moment the truth finally shows up. If you've ever walked away from something that looked perfect from the outside, you already know what I mean. Some endings don't break you. They introduce you to yourself. And honestly, that's where the real story usually starts.